Episode 128, Hot Water History, Thursday night on the feast day of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. Gary, what's going on?
Never have I been so desirous. And there's obviously a lot of different occasions where I've been wildly excited to jump on the podcast with you. But the podcast preempted me continuing to watch that horror show of a presidential debate. And I know it'll be fashionable among people in wide circles to say, oh, they're both terrible, that this is a reflection that we have two large party candidates for the presidency of the United States who are both narcissistic to the extreme and terribly ignorant and unintelligent to the another extreme. Um, I am never before have I desired. I think every American who watched that should be looking for someplace to expatriate. I've never wanted to. I mean, there have been bouts where I've just, and I did live outside the United States for a while, but uh, I am looking. You got to look at different alternatives now, at alternatives for living. I mean, if this is at all a reflection, even if it's just a minor reflection of the status of the country, it is a disastrous verdict.
So,
I watched the
as,
debate, in other words.
yeah, as someone I've only seen the clip just because some buddies were texting about it, about how they were trash talking each other about their golf game.
Yes. He can't even hit it 50 yards. I won the club championship. It's just okay, the thought I wanted to share with you in anticipation of the podcast, and I'll share it now, is that you could take just a random podcast of guys like you and me, or just random dopes, okay, who are doing a video game podcast, or two ladies who are in their maybe 60s talking about antique China or something like that, or their theater productions. And the level of intelligence in those exchange would so surpass the magnitude of what you would see at that presidential debate by a multiple of 10, 15, 20, maybe 100. I mean, it was just petulant old men. One is clearly senile and in a near vegetative state. The other just didn't answer really any questions and just kind of kept talking about how everything was great. Everything was great under me. And what it did affirm, though, and Jimmy Dore has gone on this Cato the Elder type of refrain of a rant every time he posts something. He now includes, "We are not voting our way out of this, people." I cannot support that notion, because if it's not apparent and absolutely self-evident by now that we can't vote our way out of this. In fact, voting got us to where we are. This is the voting en masse popular vote, exactly in many ways what the framers in the Constitution wish to, at least the honest ones, wish to avoid. This is what we think about, the level of discourse, just the vocabulary, or the idea formation, sentiment, appeal to logic, reason. Forget that. That might be out. That was long out the door in previous debates. But just go back and listen to the first televised debate in American history. And you have Nixon and Kennedy talking about the nuances of American foreign policy in Southeast Asia and the different ways in which to combat the ideology of communism and what is the best approach. And they were, even as late as 1960, they're quite articulate. They can form coherent thoughts that are not just full of non sequiturs and ad hominems and all these. in these logical fallacies. I would almost appreciate if Biden and Trump went on a sort of string of logical fallacies. There's there's nothing coherent enough to trot out a straw man or ad hoc propter hoc or something like that. There's just nothing, there's no substance there. You can't make anything of it. Even if it was to be made into something absurd or profane, there's just nothing there. There's nothing there. I mean, they they just pander to the lowest common denominator. I mean, I and this is gonna sound odd, but both Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, I don't think they did a bad job asking the questions. They just never got anything near a cogent response from either of them. So how do you, unless you call them to the carpet and say, well, didn't make any sense. So that's where I stand. I, and oh, the other thing too is it's so absurd to go on with this nationalistic lie, and Biden is the worst at perpetuating it, although Trump throws his 2 cents in. As long as the nation's being run by him or the country's being run by him, you can say these things like, America's the greatest, we're the best, we have the strongest military, everybody in the world respects us. We can do anything. There's all of that all of that sentiment, nationalistic and unrealistic, has been disastrous for the United States, the ordinary American citizen, and the world. The world. And there's just no recognition of that. I mean, imagine for a moment, you could just look at a South American, African, Asian military junta leader, or someone who might have been elevated to the status of president or prime minister or leader of a developing or third world country. And their mental capacities so far exceed, I mean, that's not hard to do with Biden, but I mean, but again, I think we've always said about Trump, it's just like the instinct is there. There's this penchant that he doesn't necessarily through cognition understand what is good, but it's just almost by instinct he falls into it. It's like there's a mallet that we as the body politic use, and instead of hitting his knee, we hit his brain, and his brain kind of tingles and wakes up and then um does the right thing, I suppose, or pursues some policy that's at least less disastrous than the previous regime. But that think think about or just ponder for a moment, and we might have done this when you were in my US history class, but go back and look at just any old speech given by Grover Cleveland. And he'll go on for pages and pages, or in his written responses to Congress or something along those lines. He will go on for at considerable length about what is the optimal tariff policy that ought to be conducted vis-a-vis French Indochina. And it's these guys, they don't know where French Indochina was, or that even that Indochina was French at one time. I mean, so and they would cite, and Cleveland cites different economists. He looked at and read William Graham Sumner and all these luminaries of the time. And instead we got two very senile men. Trump's not senile. I'll give him that. But abhorrent was his answer on abortion. He wants a compromise and has no clear distinctions. He just wants to hit back at Biden as being baby killer Joe with all the Democrats allowing late-term abortion. His foreign policy is just a disaster. His response was a non-response to climate change. I was hopeful. The debate really dispelled a lot of my hope that he would pick Vivek, because Vivek is not going to stand there and say that climate change is real or that we or just obfuscate. He's going to take it head on. And I hope that the mallet hits Trump in the right temple of the head, and he does through his instinct pick Vivek. We'll see. I doubt it. It's going to be like Tim Scott or something like that.
Mike Pence.
Yeah, yeah,
Mikey Pence. Run it
yeah.
back.
Well, I feel as though we've unfortunately wasted too much time already talking about this absurdity.
Yeah. Take us to a higher level. What do we got? What's today?
Today's the
Well,
feast day
I
of
did say that.
today is the feast day of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. So what Charlie and I have prepared for everyone in terms of our own discussion too is just a background and some iconography and exegesis as we pray uh and reflect on the icon, this beautiful image of Mary as the Mother of God, holding the Son of God, and having angels adore them. So we'll talk about just not just the background and what the meaning of the image is, but a little bit of the history behind it and how not just through our affiliation with the best parish and church on the face of the earth, and that's our St. Mary Perpetual Help in Bridgeport and Chicago, but we could talk a little bit about our personal reflections on why we're so devoted to this means by which to communicate our love and adoration to both Mary as Mother of God and her divine Son. Let's dive right into it, huh?
Yeah. Let's do it.
So allow me to share my screen and I'll go ahead and bring up the image of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. And unfortunately, it went over here. Let's take a look. Oh God. I really hate why this does this. Okay, so hold on. All right. There we go. So a lot of people comment on the image, and we'll do our best to be very descriptive for all the audio listeners. But obviously the icon is it's a Greek Byzantine icon. Its origin was on the island of Crete. We'll go into a little bit of history and background behind it before, but first about the meaning. So we have Greek lettering up at the top, right? Oh, before we get into the nuances and the detail, anything strike you or you want to comment on as you look at and pray over the image?
I guess I've never known who the angels are.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is on the right portion. That would be our right portion, left of the icon. That's Gabriel. And in Greek up here are the letters for Gabriel. And then Michael is over here. So we have two archangels. And you'll note that Archangel Gabriel is holding the cross as the instrument of our redemption, and Jesus is as a child, as an infant, looking at Gabriel. And I'll get into actually why I think in the image and then every reproduction of it, Jesus is looking at very pensively Archangel Gabriel in this scene, and Gabriel's bringing the cross to him. And then Michael is holding actually the spear that pierces his side, the sponge, and a number of different of the instruments of his passion, including the crown of thorns. Okay. Um, People have commented about how reflective the gaze of Mary is. It's solemn and but there's a hint of more than a hint of holy correction for us. Uh, a lament to be sure, but a total confidence and strength in her son and what God is accomplishing through Jesus. Any other feelings as you look at the gaze?
Yeah, it's really deep. It's
Right.
just like usually when you see a like a mother at church holding their baby, they'll either be smiley or more serious as with concern for the kid. But
Mm.
this is like a stare outwards towards us.
Yes, it's a very penetrating glance, and it is one that calls the viewer, we as sinners, to account that the sacrifice that Jesus is going to make is hers as well as, for example, the prophetess Anna told her at the presentation that a sword will pierce her heart, right? So we have all of these, and Simeon, I think it's Simeon who also speaks of that. So you have the gaze, it's very powerful. And let's just go into the detail and maybe we could comment a little bit further about why this is, um, as an icon, is really all great icons, communicates just so much of theological, philosophical, and I'd even go so far as to say moral and relational truths about how God communicates his essence to us through this mediatrix of Mary, but also through art, and the created the created world and order that the Father established. So up in the corner, you have the Greek letters for Mother of God. So this is a Theotokos image. Theotokos meaning Mother of God. And her clothing is typical of Marian depictions in that her undergarment in this case is red, which symbolizes her humanity, as in the blood. And she's put on blue, which is the color of divinity. And Jesus's garments are reversed. So in a way, it's talking about the incarnation's intrusion, the invasion of the divine into our nature. So he's wearing an undergarment of blue, signifying his divinity, and then the red, which means he's taken on a truly human nature. The angels, as I said, are up represented in Gabriel and Michael, the archangels. And of course, you have IC, XC, and that's our sort of transliteration of the Greek letters, and that is for Jesus Christ. And what I love about, I wanted to allude to the presence of the angels, so I'm glad you talked about them right away. Do you know what the archangels are named? At least those that are specifically named in Scripture. There are four of the archangels, really three and a half. Ariel's kind of an interesting one, but the three dominant or predominant archangels in Scripture are Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. And the two who appear here, Michael means do you know what his name means from the Hebrew? Michael, Mikael.
No.
So Michael from the Hebrew means who is like God, who is like God. This is a perfect name for the archangel who defeated Satan in Revelation, casting him to hell in the first bout of the heavens against the demonic, against Lucifer and his legion of demons. Because remember, much of the patristic tradition, but especially medieval traditions, are that Satan's rebellion was caused by pride. So when Satan, in a sense, wishes to dispossess God of his his power and reign over all of creation, the response of Michael is, who are you? Who is like God? Who are you trying to be, Lucifer? And it's through his righteousness and power that this archangel is able to defeat a seraphim. Lucifer is a seraphim, the highest order, our choir of angels, or he's from that choir. So who is like God? It's beautiful. And I'll reflect in a moment why that's so important, because actually I'll just do it now. Michael defeated Satan. This is part of my own personal theological reflection on the image. Michael defeated Satan once, and banished him through the power of God to hell and the rest of the demons who rebelled in the heavens. Mary, pictured here, is going to crush Satan's head. Jesus then goes so far as to use the instruments that Michael is carrying, instruments, by the way, which at first glance, at first sight, are methods of humiliation. And he will turn them around as only God can, take that nothingness of the evil and mutate it and transform it into the instruments by which Satan's going to be humiliated. Because it's through the acceptance of an expiative choice of Christ that he takes on that suffering so as to redeem the world, which is, of course, Satan's end. It's Satan's greatest sufferance, I suppose. So these are the instruments of expiation, and you have pictured, as the fathers of the church said over and over again, and later the medievals like Aquinas and Anselm would confirm, that we have pictured the new Eve and the new Adam. So Michael's in the background, and you'll note that Michael, if you examine the image, it's almost as if he has a wry smile.
Yeah.
He has a kind of wry smile, and I think that's as a result of his knowledge of his role in first humiliating Satan and banishing him to hell, and then now the ultimate triumph that Satan really doesn't totally understand or anticipate is about to proceed. Then on the other side, there's Gabriel. Gabriel, God is my strength. God is my strength, Gabriel. So why is that so important? Well, Jesus looks to Gabriel. Just as throughout the Gospels, when Jesus, as the adult in his ministry, he appeals to the strength of the Father. He appeals to the wisdom of the Father. And so there's also the tradition, and I find this to be very compelling, since God has told us that, and Jesus himself told us that at our conception, we have a guardian angel given to us to guide and lead us. Well, Jesus being a full human being, the idea is that of course, he had a guardian angel, but whereas we have as each human being, we have a lower rank of the lowest rank of angels. We have just the angels. Well, since he's the Son of God and he's perfect as a human, and of course in his divinity, he had an archangel. And who else would be fitting to be Jesus's guardian angel, but then Gabriel, because he's there at his conception? What do you think? Touching, nice, fitting?
Yeah, that's a good connection.
Okay. So Jesus looks at Gabriel just as he instructs us to seek the perfection of the Father. And how do we do that? A bridge, a tie to that divinity, both in their essence and in their work, are our guardian angels. So Jesus looks to Gabriel. And in this, what I think is so powerful is that Satan, in tempting, if you go back to Genesis in the temptation in the garden, what Satan says to Eve is really quite deceptive. Essentially, what Satan does is that he proclaims that God's kind of weak in a roundabout way, doesn't he? He says, "Well, listen, Eve, just take the fruit of the tree of knowledge, and God's not going to bring about his justice." And I mean, he's really just kind of keeping you from being more like God. More, in a way, it's the question that is Michael's first name, who is like God. And he says this, and Eve is then tempted to say, well, why wouldn't God want us to be like him? You see? So what Satan is doing is, of course, what he did forever, and Jesus says he was a liar from the beginning, right? Is that he's making a mess of, or trying to make a mess of, ontological hierarchy, our being within the world, our rank. And that's the opposite of what Jesus is doing here. He's looking toward the angel who says that God's, of course, not weak, but his very name means God is strong. Yeah. Last, a bit, an element of the thing we should talk about that most people are interested in regarding the icon is that, do you see Jesus' sandals falling off there?
Mm.
You want to take a stab at what that might symbolize? Well, what happens when you lose your shoe? What have you done?
You got to pick it back up.
Well,
You have to
okay.
put it back on.
No, what's happened before you lost your shoe?
You
Whether it's a sandal
kicked it
or a shoe.
off. You kicked it off, or you.
Well, the laces became undone, or it became loosened somehow because you were running, usually, or walking vigorously, or you had done something to cause it to fall off.
Sure.
So one thing is that we see Mary's matronal and maternal love and protection for Christ. It might symbolize that he ran to her, correct? And there he finds in the caring arms of his mother protection and succor, help. But another, and I think more powerful interpretation, and it's seen in other icons. I have an icon of St. Joseph here, and St. Joseph is holding the child Jesus up, and Jesus is reaching up to heaven, actually. And sure enough, his sandals falling off too. It's that he's not bound by things of this earth. So he could, whereas his sandals, which are manna and material, would fall off him, he's levitating or kind of moving beyond that which keeps us in the earth. So he's not bound by our limitations. So he's both in time, one could argue, and out of time as the incarnate word of God, which I find that to be, again, a repeat of what I had said earlier, that the incarnation is the great invasion and intrusion, the holiest invasion and intrusion into human nature. It's ridiculous to think about that God would become incarnate like us and take on our entire essence, and yet he did, for our salvation, for our freedom, our ultimate freedom, in cooperation with his grace. And that's why he's attempting to be so persuasive all the time. Jesus isn't being coercive. He's constantly persuasive, and it's through his works and his teachings that we're brought to faith, either like the apostles who saw him firsthand, or we who are granted that gift of faith despite not having seen, as he instructed the apostle Thomas and in after the resurrection. Okay, so we want to get into a little history, or do you have any more questions about the icon?
No, let's hear the history.
Okay, as I alluded to before, this is of Byzantine Greek origin, as most icons were at the time. But how did it end up in Rome? It's kind of an interesting story. So it was created on Crete, and it was readily seen as a beautiful and sacred image and sacramental. And from its very beginning, from its creation, it was thought to have the ability to at least convey miracles, of course, convey miracles onto those who sought the protection of this Our Lady, or Mother. The actual title of the icon is Mother of Perpetual Help. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stories. It was transported in the middle of the 17th century, right around 1648, from Crete as Ottoman Turks started to bombard and invade the island. And so to protect it from being destroyed or that there might be some sacrilege committed against the image, it was conveyed to Ostia just outside of Rome. And then, oh, actually, speaking of the name of the icon, there was a vision that a little girl had once it arrived in Rome, that the Virgin Mary had appeared to this little girl, and there were other stories that were about this. It was quite the journey for this, a trip for this icon, because there were people that kind of stood in the way of it appearing for the public once it arrived in Rome. But this little girl had a vision of Mary, and she said that Mary instructed her, I want my icon of the Mother of Perpetual Help. So this is an icon. It's so special that Mary named it herself. So it's Mother of Perpetual Help to be in a church for open for veneration in Rome. And she even instructed various people of what or where the church should be. And interestingly enough, she said, I want I want my image to be venerated. And of course, through that worship of my son uh, to be engaged in and to be furthered in this image of the icon in the church of Santa Maria Maggiore, my church, she says, or she conveyed, and the church of my adoptive son, St. John the Evangelist, or St. John in the Lateran. So there was a church that was, interestingly enough, in between them. It was called St. Matthew, and it actually dated back to the 4th century, amazingly enough. So because Mary had given the instruction of having her icon in 2 places, they put the icon in the church in between them in St. Matthew. So miracles started to occur as a result of veneration taking place. It was placed in the Church of St. Matthew on March 27th, 1499. About 300 years later, 311 years later, French imperial troops under the command of Napoleon occupied and absorbed Roman territory in the Papal States into the French Empire. And because the Church of St. Matthew was owned by the Augustinian friars, and the Augustinian friars refused to move or vacate this building that the French troops wanted for whatever purposes, housing or what have you, the French just simply demolished the church and the monastery. And so the icon had to be taken out, and then it was kind of in limbo for about several decades as to where it was. And then finally, in 1853, Pius IX ordered the Redemptorists, the order of priests and religious that St. Alphonsus Liguori had founded. He ordered the Redemptorists to move essentially their headquarters to Rome, and on the site of the old Church of St. Matthew, between Santa Maria Maggiore and St. John the Lateran, they built a church to St. Alphonsus Liguori, and it's in that church today that the icon remains, the original icon. To this day, the Redemptorists have a powerful, powerful devotion and connection as a result of this to Our Lady of Perpetual Help. Finally, the last thing I want to convey and communicate is that by grace, because I had done this background into the image, its history, the meaning behind it, I decided, well, why don't I take a look at the different Redemptorist materials on the icon? So I went to the Redemptorist TV. They have a YouTube channel and page. And on each day, they have different devotions for people to pray with them. And today they had a special devotion to Our Lady of Perpetual Help. And what I found so touching was that in the various prayers and the chanting and singing, they posted on the video all of these prayer requests that different people who are connected to the channel or directed directly or connected directly to the Redemptress, all these different petitions and asks that they had. And I found one by just random. I paused the video to write something down, and one of the petitions popped just right at this moment in which I paused it, and it read like this. This is pretty powerful from my perspective. It read, "For my autistic son, that he may be blessed with caring and supportive people in his life." And this was from Richmond, British Columbia. A mother or father is pleading for the intercession of Our Lady, that she might be that conduit, that mediatrix of prayer and petition and intercession, to take that blessed prayer and that heartfelt desire for their child suffering from a disability and challenge, that they might feel loved and comforted even when they're gone. I mean, that's that that hit me so hard. Um, and it just why it hit me so hard is just because it's such a reflection of this mother of ours who was given to us by Christ on the cross, that our laments, our struggles might be taken in her mantle, in her care, and conveyed to God Himself. And that we can somehow trust. We can trust. We can live in the hope and trust that our love is transformative, that our virtue and our prayer and our petition before God, we live in the faith and hope that He hears these prayers, and to the extent that they're sincere, authentic, genuine, and of God, they'll be heard. And that's really the only solace that we have. It's certainly not in political figures, it's not in democracy, it's not even in good things like the beauty of created order, or the sentiments that we feel that are fleeting, that might be just genuine and good, but the permanence of love and its transformative power, as we look upon the most amazing relationship of our Mother Mary with Christ. It's so perfect then, therefore, too, that the feast of Our Lady of Perpetual Help is in the month in which we celebrate Jesus' Sacred Heart, because it's His will, it was His divine will that she become our mother and care for him and care for us and love us in the ways in which she poured forth her very essence for our salvation, and allowed the incarnation to come into the world through her.
Amen. That was beautiful.
I'd encourage people, if they're interested in more stuff on Our Lady of Perpetual Help, to take a look at the Redemptorist website. And there's great novena that started today and goes for another 9 days to Our Lady of Perpetual Help. May she be our constant aid, and may the sweetness of her love for Christ be reflected in our worship, in our actions, and our beliefs.
Do you want to stop sharing your screen so we could talk about a town that isn't so close with Our Lady of Perpetual Help?
Not really, so I'll keep it on the side. Here it is.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
It's the people segment. Meanwhile in Oak Park. Got 3 stories. OPRF hopes detectors can crack down on vaping. They deflect plenty of hits, but what students are smoking isn't clear.
I have to side with the students here. I would find the most potent type of weed and drug possible. I mean, I'd be getting the kratom. Can you smoke kratom in a
I,
vape?
I don't know.
Yeah, you do, Charlie. All right, Panama Red. You know it.
Oak Park and River Forest High School is looking for ways to tackle vaping on campus with the help of vaping detectors. During the June 6th committee of the whole board meeting, David Narain, assistant principal of operations, presented a security update, which included information on vaping at the high school. According to Narain, the district used vape sensors placed in 4 high traffic restrooms, 2 boys' restrooms, and 2 in-girls restrooms.
Two
Okay.
in girls' restrooms.
Yeah, I
So
know.
it was only the popular girls that went into that one.
Right.
The in
Right.
girls. The in crowd.
The data showed that there was an average of 102.3 hits per week, with about 58% of hits coming from the boys' restrooms and 42% from the girls' restrooms. That's 21.2 hits per day, with 12.4 hits coming from boys' bathrooms. Okay, and 8.9 hits from girls' bathrooms.
What about
So
the trans bathroom?
they just divided it by 5. Yeah, that's a good point.
They don't have the trans bathroom. They gotta have.
That's where everyone goes. That's like their funnel into the trans bathroom. Is that's the only place they can go vape.
That'd be great.
Exactly what students are smoking isn't clear. According to Narain, the detectors do not break down what is detected, solely that smoke or fumes were detected. After smoke or fumes are detected, an alert would go off to notify security staff, and a camera located outside the bathrooms would be triggered to start recording. An audible alarm will sound if someone tries to tamper with the device, Narain said. Despite the decline of e-cigarette use among high school students, from 14.1% in 2022 to 10% in 2023, vaping is still a concern.
Wait, wouldn't that be amazing if it kept going off just because it was bad food in the cafeteria, it's just nasty shits.
Just farts that they're picking up on.
The poor kid, they finally go in and try to buzz kid. He's like, I swear. I swear. Oh my God. What did you eat?
According to the CDC's tobacco product use among U.S. middle and high school students, National Youth Tobacco Survey 2023, 22.2% of U.S. middle school and high school students report using, quote, any tobacco product, with e-cigarettes remaining the most commonly used tobacco product among adolescents. Among middle school and high school students who currently use e-cigarettes, 25.2% used e-cigarettes daily, and 89.4% used flavored e-cigarettes, the report's authors said. E-cigarettes have been the most commonly used tobacco product among adolescents since 2014. Quote, vaping is an epidemic across the entire country, Narain said. I haven't spoken with anybody in any district that has solved this issue.
So why are they trying?
Addressing vaping and smoking in the bathrooms is the only recommendation from the campus safety procedures update that came with an established cost. To purchase and install vape detectors in every student restroom would cost the district approximately $140,372 and has been included in the 2025 school year budget. However, the item was brought before the board as a discussion item, and Narain said it would not be brought back to the board for a vote at this time. Quote, we have committed to further researching the use of the product in other school districts, Narain told Wednesday Journal. Board President Tom Koski said he agreed with continuing to gather information on how successful vape detection programs have been in other districts. Quote, there is really no guarantee that the system really addresses the problem, Narain said.
But we're going to spend the money to research it anyway.
The product would only be detecting that vaping is happening, said Narain, adding that there's a chance that behavior is just redirected to a different location on campus. But many school districts across the country have already begun to install or have announced their plans to install vape detectors. According to Education Week in 2023, the Montgomery County School District in Maryland announced they would pilot detectors in 5 of the 26 high schools in the district. According to the article, the district, one of the largest in the country, planned to use an expected financial settlement with Juul, an e-cigarette manufacturer, to finance the purchase of the detectors, a move adopted by other districts across the country. Juul reached settlements with states and school districts across the country, including an approximate $67.6 million settlement with the state of Illinois, who sued Juul in 2019 for marketing harmful nicotine products to minors.
Oh my God.
Narain said that vaping, quote, at its root is a social, emotional concern, whatever that means. According to Narain, there are already initiatives at the high school to tackle vaping from a quote, social, emotional learning lens. Students caught by the detector would have to be subjected to a behavior education plan, which includes serving and in-school reflection, said Linda J. Parker, assistant superintendent and principal at OPRF. There is a curriculum through Third Millennium Classroom, an organization that provides evidence-based online prevention and intervention courses for various categories, including nicotine, alcohol, and cannabis and other drugs that students do. So there is some education as well as the use of a way back in, Parker said. There is the social emotions piece. Why do they keep saying that?
Just because they want everybody to be conformed to one another.
That we do
Supposed to
give
experience the same emotions to everything, same reaction to everything.
There is the social emotions piece that we do give to the students if they are detected in this. But the school needs to do something, said parents in the community.
Ugh.
Quote, many students vape at OPRF and it is not a priority for the staff, said Gail Gerhardt, a community member. Quote, the students always smoke in the bathrooms. No one monitors this. For the teachers, it's not their job and they turn a blind eye to the problems. Hall monitors are very spread out and they only really have a reaction when there's a fight. The kids at OPRF get away with vaping and there are no consequences. But the effects can be really damaging, said a former OPRF parent who pulled their child from the high school after they were allegedly introducing to vaping and marijuana in the bathrooms during passing periods. The parent asked for their name to be withheld to protect their child's identity. Quote, I think she had a hit before almost every class, the parent said. This greatly impacted her mental health and I pulled her from the school. It is inconceivable to me that we pay so much in taxes and can't hold kids accountable to using illicit substances in school. Aaron McManus, a community member, said having conversations with students about certain dangers of vaping, including counterfeit vapes, is a great way to emphasize the health risks for students. Quote, there's a ton of vapes that are made with absolutely identical packaging to the real thing, but they use cheap chemicals that have put people in the hospitals or even killed them, McManus said. A lot of folks buy counterfeit vapes from corner stores and gas stations, thinking that they're buying a legitimate product. A lot of store owners think they're selling the real stuff when they're not. McManus, whose daughter is a rising 6th grader in D97, said he speaks with her, quote, all the time about these types of issues. Quote, that really leads into a high impact conversion on the ways that even regular vapes can be really damaging to your body, he said. Quote, I don't think it's a huge percentage of the Oak Park population, but it is enough to be a concern, Narain said, adding that students who don't vape are being exposed to it when simply trying to use the bathrooms.
Yeah. That's the whole piece.
Yeah.
Like the general track of the village. It's an article that goes nowhere.
Here's a continuation of last week's read.
Oh, nice.
Trustee calls problems at OP Housing Center a quote financial quagmire. The
Giggity.
Live in Oak Park program will be shut down due to a lack of funding, the center's leader says. Despite overwhelming support from advocates of the Oak Park Regional Housing Center at a village board meeting last week, trustees said they are not inclined to continue to fund the organization because of its troubling financial issues. Trustee Susan Buchanan called the center's situation a quote financial quagmire and quote unacceptable at the meeting. But what does this mean? To Athena,
Athena Williams. Oh, yeah. I love this lady.
To Athena Williams, HC's executive director, it means that unless the village continues its funding, the Live in Oak Park program, which helps foster racial integration in the village, will shut down 30 days from that June 18 meeting. It means 3 full-time staff members will be laid off, along with 1 part-time employee, and their hours have already been cut.
Wow. So wait, we're going on about 10 days here. Oh no, we're not. You're right. It was June 18th. I thought for some reason it was May 18th. Okay, so I'm going to make a wild prediction and say that when July 18th rolls around and the Live in Oak Park program is officially defunct, that the seas won't absorb, unfortunately, won't flow into Oak Park, and that a gigantic hole won't just envelop it.
You never know.
Yeah.
Quote, after a year of no funding, I cannot continue to fund the program, Williams said. I would like to not see it go. To trustee Lucia Robinson, she hopes it means Williams and Housing Center staff will take the time to self-assess their financial problems and to take corrective action. She quoted a statement from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development report that said the Housing Center does, quote, not appear to be financially capable to perform and administer the grant in compliance with all regulations.
Well, that's kind of rich, though, about that coming from HUD when
yeah, right.
It's part of a government that is incapable of funding itself and the like.
Quote, there are serious financial challenges faced by this organization, Robinson said.
The use of language, financial challenges. How about mismanagement? How about graft, corruption, theft?
The village began debating whether to continue support for the housing center for several reasons, including because it received an inactive status with HUD in 2023 after it delayed staff salaries and because it received an inconclusive financial review from a village auditor. Williams has disputed allegations that she has mismanaged the organization's money and said a lack of funding contributed to the problems.
Those two things are not, they are mutually exclusive. In other words, what happened to the money that she did get? She can't say that she didn't mismanage the funds because we were underfunded. What happened to the money that was given?
Both sides appear to be standing their ground with tough decisions ahead. Supporters push for resolution. At the meeting, every public comment ahead of the trustees' discussion regarding the housing center was vehemently supporting the organization. Commenters, including longtime residents, OPRHC board and staff members, and an Oak Park landlord said its mission should continue in the village, with one person calling it, quote, inconceivable that the board would, quote, walk away.
Oh my God.
These
people, what if the hole does appear, they should be the first ones swallowed.
The 52-year-old respected center's mission is, quote, to achieve vibrant communities and promote intentional and stable residential integration throughout Oak Park and the region. Daniel Lauber, who has served on the OPRHC board in the past, said he's witnessed how other villages have lost fostered integration after closing their respective housing centers. He said he doesn't want to see that happen in Oak Park. Quote, Oak Park didn't get here by accident, he said. It took considered efforts that I'm afraid a great many members of the village staff seem to be unaware of.
What fantasy world are they living in where Oak Park is integrated? It's not integrated. Do you think that Oak Park's integrated?
I would say so. There's definitely some segregation, but there's definitely integration.
Definitely segregation. Go to the rich areas of North Oak Park. You see a lot of black people walking around?
Yeah, there's some.
Yeah. Okay. They're not living in the houses there.
I think you'd be surprised of
okay.
the last 10 years. Rob Breimeyer.
Then I stand corrected because obviously this center has been amazing in trying to integrate a neighborhood.
Rob Breimeyer, a former executive director of the OPRHC, said Oak Park is an open and inclusive community because of the dedication to achieve that, but that work is ongoing, he said. Quote, it's that partnership that has profoundly advanced our culture, our commitment to the values of equity, inclusion, and justice, he said. Separate can never be equal.
Okay. Wait, I'm all confused. What did this place actually do to get Oak Park integrated? To whatever degree it is. I'm saying it's little. You're saying it's something.
No, I'm not saying these people have done anything. I'm just saying that Oak Park as a town overall is probably more integrated than you might think.
Okay. Furthermore, again, it rests on this very racialist fallacy that somehow, because I have a black person or family or minority person or family living next to me, that I am now just by proximity more inclusive.
Right, exactly.
That is insane. It's not by osmosis that you gain what one might call understanding or tolerance or what have you, or just mutuality. You don't just do that because someone passed you on the street or lives next door to you. But this is the sort of simplest of virtue signaling. It's just like, hey, how is this? This is not essentially different than the old joke of, there was a great Seinfeld episode about this when George is trying to prove that he's not a racist in order to get ahead at work because he's accused of being a racist. And so he says that he has plenty of black friends, which he doesn't. So he's trying to conjure up in his mind who could go with him to work, a black acquaintance, and he finds his old exterminator, who's a black guy. He drags him with him to work so that his black boss could see him with him. How is this? This is not substantively different.
Yeah. Michael Stewart, an OPRHC employee, said he's worked under 6 executive directors. They all have strengths and challenges, he said, but Williams has an abundance of skills and expertise in the field. Without village funding,
is graft.
Without village funding, Stewart said larger management companies could take over small housing providers and increase rent prices. Lauber and
Again, this is just communism. This is just communism. They should just come out and say it.
Lauber and others accused village manager Kevin Jackson and village staff of unfair conduct, adding that the village does not appear interested in maintaining the housing center. Quote, is it at all possible that the village manager's lack of specificity in his expectations of the housing center has anything to do with your trustees' lack of expectations of him? Resident Ralph Lita asked.
What? That makes no sense, but just move on. It's incomprehensible.
But village president Vicky Skaman, along with other trustees, refuted the claim that Jackson or any staff acted unfairly. Quote, any accusations that our staff have been anything but professional or fair is completely uncalled for, she said. We do share the same goal. Comments that we do need to remain intentional in order to remain integrated, I completely agree with.
Okay, we just stand up.
Defending her record, ? Williams kicked off the discussion at the meeting with 2 requests: that the village staff participate in an informative session about nonprofit budget allocations and a monthly meeting between her and Jackson. Quote, this is not a one-size-fits-all nor a situation that can be resolved overnight, Williams said. But she did not present what the board considered a comprehensive corrective action plan at the June 18th meeting, and board members did not appear pleased. Quote, I don't know how we move forward from here, how we would simply greenlight funding from here, when what I don't see is an actual plan, Trustee Brian Straw said. Robinson pointed out a litany of concerns, including a deteriorating relationship between the village and the housing center, that Williams delayed staff pay, and that no accountability measures were taken. No plan to prevent the financial woes happening again was presented, she asked. Skaman said she expected a corrective action plan to be presented June 18th. She said the community should hold Williams accountable for, quote, what could potentially be the loss of a 50-plus year relationship between the OPRHC and the village. She also said housing center staff may be, quote, threatened because of poor management. Quote, you are disappointing your staff, Skaman said. You are disappointing this community.
Ooh, Vicky.
Williams did not directly respond to Skaman's comments at the meeting. However, she told Wednesday Journal that, quote, everyone has a right to express themselves.
The great cop out when you're just caught red-handed.
Trustee Robbie Paracott said he
Oh, here.
moved to
Oh, Robbie. Finally, it's Robbie time.
said he moved to Oak Park with the help of the housing center. So he understands the impact it has. But as a fiduciary, he was not in support of funding the housing center now. The OPRHC needs full compliance with HUD regulations, a financial audit, and increased oversight, he said. Many of the board members have allocated time and effort to help the housing center, Trustee Chibuke Inyia said, but it hasn't been enough. Buchanan also pointed out that if the village board were to fund the housing center with community development block grant funds, while it is on probationary status with HUD, and if the organization is declared inactive in October, the village would be liable to repay those dollars.
Oof.
Williams countered by saying the organization does have a, quote, active status and is not on probation. All right, last segment of this article.
Okay, wait. Is it on probation? Double secret probation? Triple serious probation.
Williams plans. Williams told Wednesday Journal while procedures she and staff lead at the housing center have proven to be sufficient, she may have to review or make adjustments. Yeah, I'll say. She also said that she already implemented a finance committee and might add more oversight to meet trustees' requests. She said she believes she did her due diligence. For example, she pointed out when it became apparent pay would be an issue due to cash flow problems, she spoke to a human resources consultant and a payroll consultant. She talked to HR about
I did exactly what
about
I did
cash.
exactly the bare minimum of anyone would do when we can't make payroll. I'm accountable.
At least she spoke to a payroll consultant.
Yeah.
Williams was presented with options, including to lay staff off or to delay pay and make staff aware that it would happen. She said she then spoke to the housing center's board, who told her if staff was okay waiting for pay, she could do that. Williams said her staff told her they were. But when funds from the village ceased in 2023, she said she had to pay staff salaries from other funds. The agency also took out lines of credit to perform basic operations, funds that have to be paid back. Village funding has been paused for almost a year now, and I've continued to run the program without fail, she said.
What crumbling to the ground.
What I'm about to say completely goes against what she just says. But village officials have said the OPRHC ended the fiscal year 2023 with a deficit of about $356,617. Williams argued that's an operating loss, not all deficit. Because the Live in Oak Park program will now have to close, Williams said she's considering fundraising to at least pay off the associated debt from 2023.
Good luck with that.
But since the COVID-19 pandemic, she said fundraising efforts have been difficult. But for now, the program will have to be shut down if there's still a lack of funding at the end of the 30-day period Williams budgeted for. Some say the lack of work to foster racial integration could be detrimental to the community. All right, we got one more. This is going long, but this will be quick.
What do you think was the percentage of Ravi being tongue in cheek there about how I was brought?
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. No, this guy's a business guy. He is an entrepreneur, and he is, even if you're a socialist entrepreneur, you still have to run the business at the end of the day. And you still have to look at those, Excel worksheets.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows.
Yeah.
Leaf bagging will not be postponed. Many residents have loudly opposed bagging leaves for collection. Oak Park resident Robert Parks shared a petition with trustees at the June 11th village board meeting signed by 1,875 residents asking to delay leaf bagging for collection until 2025. Quote, the entire village should not be punished for one person's bad mistake, Parks said, referring to a car that caught on fire last fall after it was parked on top of leaves. Quote, the final outcome should be determined by all stakeholder citizens.
Charlie, you might quickly inform the audience that lives outside of Oak Park in this region why this is so weird for Oak Parkers. Like everyone else would bag their leaves, but in Oak Park, what did they do? They just shove them into the street.
Right.
and then a truck with a kind of a leaf collector picks them up in the street and then dumps them into a dumpster. Right? This is some honored tradition in Oak Park that you don't bag your leaves, you just push them out into the street, which is really great for traffic in the side streets, by the way, and for safety when a car parks in front of or on top of them. But go ahead.
Where was that quote? The entire village. Oh yeah, I read that. But he and the petition signers did not have their wish granted Tuesday night. The village board voted 4-3 to continue the leaf bagging requirement for collection this fall. Parks and other residents also asked for a referendum to vote on leaf bagging before its implementation. The board effectively denied that request. The original decision was made April 30th after trustees voted 5-2 in favor of leaf bagging. This ends the longtime practice of raking leaves into piles on the streets. Some officials said bagging is intended to increase safety. The leaf pile method can lead to fires, which village officials have said happen almost annually, lack of visibility, clogged drains that contribute to flooding, and parking and biking issues. Leaf piles can also obscure children who are playing from oncoming cars.
Right. I mean, how dangerous is this? I've heard, I seem to be able to recall stories where little kids jump into the leaves and then a car goes by and hits them or something like that.
Yeah. Critics who include residents and some members of commissions, including the Aging in Communities Commission and Disability Access Commission, claim the cost and physical demands are unjustified. Hurdles to reversing the decision. Lakeshore Recycling Services has stated it's unable to guarantee leaf collection in 2024 with the street pile method, according to village officials. After the decision to switch was made in April, LRS adjusted its village operations. That included canceling special equipment needed to pick up leaves in the street and reallocating resources to purchase a new collection truck. LRS also already made staffing changes to accommodate the leaf bagging program. Returning to the leaf pile method may not have been possible for them, village officials said in a report. Okay, this is getting long.
Yeah.
I'm gonna skip around because Ravi says something.
Oh, okay. I see it. Trustee Ravi Parakat.
Board discussion. Village President Vicky Skaman, who originally opposed leaf bagging, reiterated her wish that there had been more education and community buy-in for bagging leaves before the final vote.
Oh my God. How does anything get ever done here?
It's everything is just education, community, emotional, social integration.
Correct.
They don't say anything. They don't say anything. Trustee Ravi Parakat also opposed the original decision to bag leaves. He said he'd like to put the issue on a referendum for the community to vote.
These people just waste time and money and
Trustee Chibuke and Yia moved to delay the switch at the June 18th meeting, seconded by Parakat. They, along with Skaman, voted to postpone leaf bagging to 2025, but were voted down. And Yia said he doesn't want to create an undue burden on residents who aren't used to the extra work of bagging, especially individuals with disabilities and elderly residents. Quote, you don't want to start a program knowing that you're setting someone up to not be successful, he said. We want to start these programs getting off on the right foot. Some residents said they are concerned about a larger inventory of trees on their properties, saying they'll have to spend 4 figures on bags annually, Trustee Corey Wesley said. But Rob Sproul, the village's public works director, said that's a, quote, pretty unlikely situations because bags cost about 50 cents. Residents would need to use 2,000 bags to spend 4 figures. He estimated the change will cost about $7 per household. Residents who don't want to buy bags can use any rigid container, such as a spare garbage can. As long as it's filled only with leaves and placed at the curb for pickup, it will work. Trustee Susan Buchanan also said she hopes residents will leave the leaves, a sustainability initiative the village is encouraging as an alternative to bagging to improve the village's ecosystem. If residents rake their leaves into the street, Sproul said village staff will educate them about the new program and give out materials to help ensure compliance. A code enforcement officer would then likely follow up. Enforcement measures could be taken if residents do not comply over time, he said. but the village's intention is to gain compliance, not collect fines. But some residents might not comply easily. Quote, I have had some interactions with folks who suggest that they intended to engage in some civil disobedience around leaf collection, Trustee Brian
Ooh,
Strauss said.
boy,
So
when they
that's what
want
it
to
took.
inject you with a
Yeah,
genetic serum.
seriously. That's what it took. Not shutting down. Actually, they did go, a lot of them went pretty hard for that. So they did go hard when they shut down the school basketball seasons.
Oh, but come on. Did they go hard against the masking?
Oh, no. Yeah.
Okay, did they go hard against the vaccine mandate?
I'm not saying any of that.
All right.
Resident concerns. Parks, during his public comment at the June 11th meeting, said about half of the residents who signed his petition against leaf bagging were hearing about the change for the first time. Quote, most were dismayed by the speed of the decision and lack of adequate information and opportunity for input, he said. Another resident echoed that concern. He also said after years of muscle memory raking leaves into the street, some residents might forget or simply be unaware of the change, leading to a mix of bagged and street raked
Whoever that
leaves.
guy, whoever that resident is, let's get him to run for president. He'd be perfect.
Parks said purchasing bags or hiring people to bag leaves is costly, as is the equipment to assist mulching if the resident wants to do so. And leaving the leaves in place is, quote, unworkable if there's too many, Parks said. It raises concerns about mold and fungus growing, he said. At Tuesday's meeting, Dan Yapchik, the village's chief communications officer, presented a plan to disseminate the information and to engage the public about the issue, adding that staff is confident there's enough time to spread awareness. The village plans several measures, including an FAQ page that is now available on the village's website. In April, Erica Whelms, the village's environmental services manager, proposed adding leaf collection to the sidewalk shoveling program, creating a coupon program to reduce the cost of bags, and handing out complimentary bags. Those plans are in the works, as they all are.
Yes, they all are.
That has been
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
Meanwhile in Oak Park. Sorry, that was a little bit long and boring and really red tape. You could really feel the red tape. I can't even imagine sitting
Like
in
a
that
noose around the
meeting.
neck.
Sitting in that meeting.
It's
Even
about
just one of
freaking
those
leaves
meetings.
and bags, people. This is what we're this is what we're spending our time on. Boy, I don't know, Charlie. I don't know. I thought it's funny because at least Roman decadence at the fall of the empire was kind of flourish. They had a lot of flourishes, and there was wild and madness abounded.
And gladiators,
Yeah, sure. Just
fights in the Colosseum.
yeah. I mean, colossal statues that soaked up gold in the treasury, but at least it was grandiose.
Yeah.
This is death by 1,000 leaf bag paper cuts. So, and yeah. So the demise of Oak Park and maybe general American civilization will come not with a roar, but a whimper.
A whimper.
A whimper. Mm-hmm. So,
All right, everyone.
yeah. Thank you for spending, well, for you people or the audience, it'll be spending some time with us on subsequent days other than Thursday. But we are recording from Thursday night on, again, this feast day, beautiful feast day of St. Mary of Perpetual Help. Hope people enjoy it.
God bless everyone.
Peace.
Peace.